Hello, my smart friends. Today we're talking about digital detox again. Specifically, how being intentional can help you take back control of technology. Specifically, what are some things that people can do to take back control of technology, to work on their well-being with and without technology? Because clearly there's places where technology can help us. There's, you have your podcast, right? I can listen to it on an app, so that's good.
Yeah. We can use our time and budget our time in the same way we have to budget with money. And you have 168 hours in a week. How can we use them? What does time well spent for these 168 hours look like? And what strategies and safeguards can we put in place to help us be accountable to what we truly care about, to what our intention is? They can get one of these apps, like the Moment app, which will help give you reports of how you're using the technology, and then you can make decisions about time well spent by looking at the reports. And people can come up with simple structures into their life for their morning routine, can practice building a healthy routine and trying to reduce the average number of checks with the phone, which I think is like 128 times someone checks their phone in a day. I mean, if we could get that under 100 and then keep paring it down, because if you ask somebody, how many times do you need to check your email? Most people say, I could probably get by with less than 100 times. But then we don't do it because we don't realize it. It's so unconscious. And
Well, turning off notifications helps there.
yes, I've never had notifications.
Especially for email, because you can get hundreds of them in a day. I only check email a few times a day. When we were emailing back and forth, you probably noticed how slow I am with email, but that's because most people have their email programs open in the background at all times on their computers and notifications on their phones. Right. So they're actually doing email all day long, if you really look at it. I go into my email inbox only a few times a day, and that really helps control how much time I spend there. Turning off notifications for other things helps as well. And then you said that you put your phone on airplane mode at times.
I put my airplane mode on at different times of the day, and I try to be consistent with that. And I have a certain time at the end of the day where it goes on to airplane mode and stays on airplane mode through the night. I think that's helpful. I think that will freak some people out.
Well, it does. I mean, I was telling you about how I use the new iOS 12 feature, which is it allows you to lock your phone or lock yourself out of certain apps during certain periods of time. And my friends made fun of me for being so strict. Some other people were like, I could never do that, which ties back into the addiction discussion we had earlier. When I told you the story, you laughed. You said, you know what that means.
Yeah, it means they need it and they want it. It's just like somebody saying, I'm not going to be going out to the bars anymore, and all their friends saying, well, what's wrong with you, and peer pressure. I mean, that's what we see with drugs and alcohol, and that's what you see with this. So it's funny, but it's true. I think we need certain safeguards, like these apps, like having time where your phone is turned off. I also think it's important, whenever you can, to not have the phone on your person. Like when I'm at home, I don't keep the phone in my pocket. It's on the counter somewhere. When I'm at work at the hospital that I work at, I keep it at my desk, and I'm talking or giving lectures or things like that, but the phone's not on me. And I know every time I go into a lecture that it's going to be an hour or two before I can check my phone again. But just not having it on you has a benefit. And then using the apps like the Moment app to help you, and the new iOS 12, using those features to lock yourself out of it once in a while is important, because with other addictions, we see the same thing, that you can't improve this through willpower alone. That's actually what addiction is. It's a disease of willpower. that's the that's why there are programs like Alcoholics Anonymous. It's really so that when a person loses their willpower, they will be in a situation where it's harder to use. So like imagine getting sober and feeling really great about being clean, but that feeling's not going to last. There will inevitably come a time where you get bad news, or you go through a breakup, or you have a health problem, and then all those old cues are going to come back. But the question is, for a person in recovery from addiction, where will you be on the day when you get the bad news? If you are somewhere where you have pretty easy access to your old coping mechanisms, then you're likely to relapse. If you get that bad news sitting in a circle with people in a 12-step program, and they say, well, what's wrong? You're like, oh, my girlfriend just broke up with me. And they say, all right, well, we're staying with you, and we're going to go get some tea, and we're going to talk about it and make sure you go home and stay sober. And so it's not willpower that's keeping that person sober on that day, it's the structure that's built in place. It's important to keep in mind that when we're talking about using technology versus getting used by technology, the programs and the developers, they have a way they want to use us. Mm-hmm. And one developer, Jaron Lanier, talks about in some of his books about social media that something like Wikipedia is all designed by users. Anyone can edit it, right? And it's news. You can look up anything. But could you imagine if when you look up something, you get a particular explanation of that thing tailored to your preferences and belief systems, and when I look up that same thing, I get a different Wikipedia page based on my beliefs and my political background? We would think that's totally ridiculous. But that's exactly what a news feed is.
Yeah.
And we don't realize it, and we're all victim to it. So
we have imaginary friends. We have an imaginary window into the world, or an imaginary world that we're looking at if we're just looking at Facebook.
Yeah, and it all has the feel of like, I'm just getting world news and I'm more connected to the world than ever before. But really, we're existing in an echo chamber where algorithms are specifically trying to push our behavior in specific ways for advertisers. When we're online, there's all these different circles. I think there's the feeling that we're part of a world tribe now, like our circle has expanded so much, but in reality, we're existing in echo chambers on social media. It's just reflections of the consumer habits that we engage in, and our political mindsets and so on. And in some ways, we're more closed off to other tribes, and that's probably a dangerous thing too, because as all this technology develops, you really want there to be deeper and richer connection between cultures, but that's just really not happening. And a person has to work to break through that. You have to have the intention to get to know different cultures and not just passively learn everything through your newsfeed.
I was going to ask you, so what is the definition of being used by technology?
That would be the definition. Just allowing those mechanisms to influence your behavior, to be influenced. And it feels organic and authentic, but really there's 1,000 steps that go into getting somebody to click on this particular page or thing or link. And to know what your goal is when you're getting on to any app, that will help align people with intention, to know why you're using something. And it's fine to mindlessly scroll through a newsfeed, but if you ask somebody ahead of time, how much of that do you want built into your life? It's like, it's fine to watch a silly comedy on Netflix, but to only watch that all day, every day would start to get away from intention. Like somebody might at the beginning of the week say, I'd like to watch a couple funny things this week. So to know what your goal is with the technology will help protect us from being used by technology.
How do we convince others that it is important to take detox, especially if it's an employer?
Well, I think what can really help with that is advocating in your office or on your team for the employer to include in the wellness program. Most companies have some kind of wellness program. If they don't, advocate for a wellness program, and then advocate for that wellness program to include mindfulness training. And then when everybody buys in to this wellness concept and can hold each other accountable, then you can get the support that you need.
And you do that for a lot of companies, so it is happening.
It is happening. But it is amazing when I go to like a Fortune 500 company where the stress level is so high, the demand is so high, you have to be plugged in 24/7, 365, and to just do like a minute of breathing. I've literally had executives coming up to me saying, "I need this, please come back." I have no outlet for my stress, so I keep getting invited back.
Somebody on Instagram asked an interesting question. They said, what tools are out there? But then they also said, what can tool developers do to reduce this effect on people? And I was surprised because I never thought about it. Do I have an ethical responsibility as a marketer, as somebody who basically designs things to pull people into social media? Do I have an ethical responsibility toward them, especially app developers and so on? Now, the Apple Watch has a breathing feature in where it prompts you to breathe throughout the day, and then it times you. So you do a 1-minute breathing exercise. Now they've launched these locks for the phones. Is that just a marketing ploy, or is it that companies and individuals are starting to ask themselves, what is my part in creating this addiction to social media, and how can I help control it?
Yeah, I mean, there is an ethical concern for sure, but just in terms of free enterprise, that's not in the best interest economically to manage people's addictions. I mean, if you take other models like the alcohol industry in America, 10% of adult Americans consume 70% of all the alcohol in the country. So the platitude, remember to drink responsibly, sounds ethical, but if it was actually followed, it wouldn't work for the industry economically. There's a race for attention all over the world, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. So it's going to take other advocacy groups and maybe even nonprofit groups to help educate people and create tools and help get laws passed to make things safe and to put ethical teams in place at these tech giants, because like I've said before, we don't really understand exponentiality. It's only been 10 years with smartphones and the world has changed in a very big way, so it's hard to predict. This week, I'm going to give you the challenge instead of mana, and the challenge is to elicit your top 3 values. And you're going to be able to choose from a list in the description below, and we would like you to narrow it down to the 3 that are most important to you at this time in your life. And once you've got those 3, use them to inform all the decisions that you make, but specifically let them guide how you want to use Instagram and other social media. And then report back to us, let us know how it impacts your life.
So look for helpful links in the description and links to where you can find Todd and follow him and check out his podcast. And I will see you back here next week.